What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. My goodness, friend of the show, just longtime colleague in the space and world of employee and customer experience work and people work, Lily Zheng. Lily, welcome back to Living Corporate. How are you doing? Very loaded question that I ask knowing it's loaded, like what is going on?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's really good to be back. I feel like there are less than 10 people who I know who can invite me to come back to their podcast, and I'd say yes without thinking about it. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honestly, I'm doing solid. I'm doing okay. I think if we were in good times, I would say I'm doing a little less than average, but we're in horrible times. And so I'm actually doing really good given all that. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm not thriving, but I'm just one or two levels below that. So it's not bad. It's not bad, right? I'm hanging in there. I'm getting through the day. And honestly, I feel really, it's kind of weird. I feel privileged to be okay right now at a time when so many people are not okay, right? And people are losing their livelihoods. People are, people are being deported, right? People are living in fear every day. These are really scary times. And so I think as someone who is doing relatively okay, I feel kind of the weight of responsibility that comes from being in a privileged place where I can do something and I have resources and I have time and energy and I'm still doing the work that matters. So yeah, it's a heavy time, but I am doing all right.
There's something to be said about there's a privilege to say that you're doing okay, because you're right. The world is on fire. It's growing increasingly unsafe, right? When I think about lack of safety, you and I talking off mic, and I was like, I'm a black man in America, so obviously, I feel varying degrees of unsafe every day. At the same time, when I think about how far right-wing conservatism, white supremacy, and then obviously the Trump administration has made trans people out to be the central mythological boogie person of anything, right? I've never seen. I'm watching press releases, or I'm reading press releases, or I'm watching a news clip. I've never, over the past handful of years, I've never seen trans people be centered as the problem as much as I have, right? And again, I'm not 86, I'm 36. So obviously my life and perspective is not the only one, but in my lifetime, I'm just what, my God, what is it like that is just besides being exhausting, it's just the threat level, again, outside looking in, seems to be at all-time highs. And so I'm glad, to your point, that you're a couple notches below thriving, because it's a scary season.
It really is a scary time. I mean, I talk about this a lot with my colleagues, right? But I think so many of our communities feel unsafe now for different reasons. And I think this is, in many ways, a reflection of just how wide-reaching the harm being done by, the current political climate and the current administration. And I think it's also a really critical time for solidarity, right now. Like I've been in a couple conversations, not great conversations, that have kind of veered off the rails into like, well, who has it harder right now? And I don't actually think that's the right question to be asking. The answer is we all have it really bad right now, right? Like it's a dead end question for me to be like, well, do trans people have it harder, or do undocumented immigrants have it harder? Do black people have it? No, we're not going to play that, right? The answer is we're living in a climate where so many communities are deeply fearful of their survival, of their ability to, access opportunity, of their ability to support their loved ones and their families. And so this is a time, I think, even if we have these very different experiences driven by our identities, that we really need to be working in lockstep with each other. And not saying we fully empathize with anyone else's experience because our experiences are so different, but saying it doesn't matter if I fully understand your experience or you fully understand mine. Like this is the time that we have to organize together to protect each other, to keep each other safe, to keep each other resourced. And that's just kind of what I've been talking with all of my colleagues and my friends about, who, are from widely varying backgrounds. And I think that's kind of how we get from this place of like inaction or exhaustion or being frozen or overwhelmed by the magnitude of harm and into like, okay, let's do something about it, right? Because I really feel like we got to be doing something about it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think the other part, which I know it's like when you start even asking the question of like, when you have these discussions about who has it harder, it's like we oftentimes forget that people are multidimensional. So this idea of being like, oh, who has it harder, trans people? Like, okay, well, black people are also trans.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, who has it harder? Undocumented people or trans people, or undocumented people or black people. It's like, that there are trans, undocumented black people. There's trans, undocumented East Asian, South Asian people. Like this, there are people who we all exist in various kind of I'm neurodivergent, right? Like there's all sorts of and especially, it's funny because we had Amani Barberin on a little while ago, and we were talking about disability and this idea. I think we have these really preset notions of what disability is, but disability is a really large tent, and you have to be mindful that, let's just say you're not disabled today, you can easily become disabled in the next 5 minutes,
right?
And depending on how you define disability, you very well might be disabled. And that's important to know because disability and just we had this larger conversation about disability rights being rights for everybody. And to your point about solidarity, now is the time to practice it. And frankly, there's never a season to not practice solidarity. And it's crazy. And yet it's unfortunate. And yet the reality that it's often times of extreme, like naked authoritarianism, fascism, oppression that brings us together. I just want to give you your flowers in real time and say, I appreciate the fact that you and I have been able to have relationship back when DEI was in vogue. And now we're still cool when it isn't, right? I mean,
wait. Why would we not be cool? Now, like, what does that even mean? Like, oh, DEI is not in vogue, Zach. We're not friends anymore.
Hey, I don't want to air nobody out.
Wait, really?
I've had situations where people, so here's the thing. There are plenty of people that I engaged during during that season where George Floyd was murdered, that made themselves hyper available.
Yeah.
And were very willing to help and talk and communicate and feel like try to build. And as things kind of fell out of favor, it became less politically expedient to be in that space.
I see.
It's not that we became enemies, that they just weren't, the availability changed. And that's no shade to nobody.
I get that.
Life happens. I mean, like, shoot, right? Like since 2020, I've had 4 kids, right? Like, so like
You've been busy.
Yes, I have. And anyway, the twins were not part of the plan, but we are here and we move forward. Lily, I have these conversations. I had these conversations a lot today around the function and purpose of real people work in corporate contexts, right? And I say people work because I don't even want to just like limit it to DEI. Like I think sometimes it's funny, like in hindsight, I didn't agree with it then, but in hindsight, I find it especially insidious and stupid that we really delineated DEI and HR work. And when I say we, I mean like corporate consultancies, functions of practice, like people would delineate in terms of like they were like almost separate practices where it's like, hey, all of it is people work. And
Right.
I'm having these conversations more and more around the fact that we're in a moment today. Like, and you can look at like Zoran Mandami. You can look at like some of these other like political races where some of these like progressive Democrats are running. You can look at polls where the reality is that we're running up against challenging capital. Like, that's the conversation, right? It's not about like it's not about good versus it's evil and, you know, doing the right thing. It's about challenging capital, because it's about making sure that people have the right, to your point earlier, are adequately resourced and supported. And that means that people have to have the right, they have to have the resources. And the challenge that the conversation kind of keeps on coming up of like, wait, the resources actually exist. We need to redistribute these resources. We need to redistribute these resources to support poor people. We need to redistribute these resources to empower marginalized people. We need to redistribute these resources to help under supported people, and that's relative to like the government. That's relevant to people, and that those people exist either being like, you know, walking down the street or in the hallways of your job. And I'm curious, like, when you engage or like I know you've been doing a lot of thinking and work around and consulting around the world of work and the present and future of work. I'm curious, like, how much of that sentiment is coming up in the work and the conversation that you're having, and even just like the thinking and writing that you're doing.
As in like the need to redistribute resources and
yes.
And, yeah. So I would say within the walls of like a corporation, I almost never hear people talking like that, right? I think to the extent to which we talk about wealth redistribution, I hear it mostly from, this is me talking candidly, guilty liberals in high-paying jobs, who are like, wow, you know, it's unethical for me to be making so much money when I am a queer person, or when I am a woman, or when I am, you know, from this marginalized background, without me, you know, donating some of my salary or like helping pay for people and whatnot. So I'm seeing wealth redistribution talked about on a very individual-centered level, but less, I think, focused on how can these massive machines of capital, right? How can these massive organizations that have accumulated wealth utilize that wealth to benefit society? I think we heard more of that around the 2020 to 2021 era, right? When it was profitable or trendy for corporations to be centering, you know, social responsibility or purpose or values-driven leadership, or, you know, doing good by doing good to society, right? Like there was a big trend. And I think you actually did hear at that time some corporations saying like, oh, it's our responsibility to give back. Now those same corporations, not to say a corporation is a person, but the leaders leading those corporations have basically decided that there's no reason to keep that mask up, right? They've decided that there's not a benefit to saying these things, that they can say, you know, I actually take it all back. I'm going to maximally exploit as many people as possible, and you just try to stop me. You and what regulation? None. You can't stop me. So just shut up and be grateful that I give you a job. And I'm seeing that shift happen in real time. Now, again, it's not being driven by corporations. That's not a concept. Corporations aren't people. It's being driven by leaders, a very small number of executives who have decided that it's profitable to be unabashedly, nakedly exploitative, right? Because the checks and balances, whether the social ones or the regulatory ones, simply no longer exist, right? Like, and it reminds me, right, when you think of something like the EEOC, right, the Equal Opportunity
Commission.
Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Nominally, that exists to rectify cases of discrimination, right? And so the nominal check and balance is, oh, company does a bad thing. Worker sues the company. Worker brings the lawsuit to the EEOC. EEOC says, you did a bad company, right? Like, you have to make things right. Now, in reality, I think it's something like 2% of EEOC cases are actually resolved favorably for the complainant, right? Like, it doesn't work as a regulatory mechanism. And I think companies know that. They're just like, all right, we can just exploit people, make millions of dollars, and if somebody decides to have the time and resources to take their case all the way to court, we'll settle for a fraction of the profit that we made from exploiting people. Easy.
They'll be like, that's what we already have the insurance for that. We have lawyers ready for that. And then, like, on top of that, like, I mean, I remember, like, in 2020, 2022, and 2023, well, shoot, I mean, 2022 ongoing, there were mass layoffs, and they were laying off Black and brown people, queer folks, trans folks by the bushel. And I have on good authority, talking to people I know off the record, that some of those HR people, or those like senior executives, were like, well, if they want to get together and sue us, then fine, like, whatever,
right?
Like, we're moving forward. Like, they don't care. And go ahead.
It's just numbers for them.
It's just numbers for them.
Like, it's they can get away with it because there's a cost to lawsuits, and it's a cost that they've literally penciled in and factored into their budgets for the year. So, like, discrimination is just another cost, and it's not a very high one for them. So that's kind of the world that we're living in. And I think it puts those of us who are really trying to live ethical or morally grounded or whatever centered lives into this really precarious position, because by even engaging with these monoliths, right, of wealth and capital and power, we're kind of knowingly saying, if they exploit me, my opportunities for redress are close to zero, right? So it's kind of putting people into this survival mindset of just saying, I need to keep my head down. I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to shake the boat. I just need to get through each day to make whatever salary I can to bring back to my loved ones. And I don't fault anyone for making that choice. It's a terrible choice to have to make, to work for survival. And yet so many of us are in that position today, right? Like, it says a lot about the state of the working world, that for all of the lofty promises about values and purpose and doing good by society, right? Like, this is kind of the true face of a lot of the big organizations out there. Not to say every single workplace is like this, or that every single leader is like this, but many are, right? And it's becoming trendy to continue acting like this.
Well, also, like, just the nature of, like, this that's like also the nature of late stage capitalism, right? Like, yeah. like it's like the point is to exploit at ever increasing cycles. So because the short terms are getting shorter and shorter in terms of the returns that you're looking for. So yeah, it's not like it's necessarily every single person, but it doesn't have to be every single person.
Right.
It's the system it's the water within which we swim. So, okay, this fish over here has like 8 teeth, where the rest of these fish have 14 or 15 teeth. I mean, all right, okay, like, all the water's still wet and y'all still biting people. So, like, I don't know. I'm curious, as we talk about, like, I want to get back to, like, this wealth redistribution, and, like, I hear you. Like, I don't see a lot of corporations talking about that at all. Like, I think that would be decried. I mean, obviously, you saw, again, I'm gonna go back to Mandami, only because I think that was like, I think it's going to look like we're experiencing everything in real time, right? Like, and there's like major breaking news happening every single day. Like, so it's hard for, I think, us to appreciate. We're gonna appreciate it all in like 5 years, 10 years. Like, we'll look back and, like, whatever. My kids will probably read out, but, like, what was interesting about that race is how many voices came out, corporatists, like, came out saying, I'm a capitalist, and this person is a threat to who we are, and it's a threat to this city, it's a threat to this nation. He can't win because we about making money. And Democratic politicians saying, well, I believe in capitalism is great. I'm like, and so it's interesting I think like we're in such a place of like material conditional drought, where I just don't know if it's possible to have a conversation about improving experience, right? So, and again, I'm gonna say experience broadly here, because experience can be people experience out in the world. Obviously, living corporate, we talk a lot more about employee and customer experience, and so like I think in the context of a workplace, we're not necessarily talking about wealth redistribution, but we are talking about power redistribution. We're talking about authority redistribution in terms of like, okay, who's making these decisions? How big is the room? And who can speak and make a decision without having to like rub three people, like who can just make a decision and that be that.
Right.
And I think until we're able to really have that conversation and have some practical steps to really redistribute power in these organizations, corporations, we're going to have an increasingly degraded employee and customer experience. And like, I wonder, like, in the discussions and things that you're having, or as you just kind of look across the world of work, like, are you seeing anything different than that?
So am I seeing something to the contrary, that things are just going off the cliff?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, do you feel like, I would love your perspective. Like, do you think that do you think that analysis is incorrect in terms of like thinking about how we're actually making decisions and how power is organized in at these companies?
I think your analysis is correct in broad strokes. I think I would I'd focus my analysis on a different aspect of organizations. So I wouldn't necessarily ask who's in the room. I think it's not a bad place to start. But for me, I'm more concerned with who the people in any given room are beholden to. And so a question that I work through a lot with, my framework and the work that I do in organizations is, do the people in the room operate with the trust of all the people who they claim to represent? And so, whether that's their stakeholders or whether that's their workers, and if the answer is nobody, that's not good either, right? But usually the answer is somebody. Usually leaders say like, oh, we have to be somewhat responsible when making decisions, or else blank. Now, for many leaders, it's or else the investors will be mad, or else the shareholders will be mad. In 2021 and 2022, for a brief moment, it was, or else our employees will be mad, or social media will be mad, right? Now I think that's less of a concern, but there's no reason why we couldn't change that, right? Like, for the workplaces that are unionized, for example, they are beholden to the union to some extent. They don't like it. That's why companies engage in union busting, but there is a source of power there. And so I ask myself, right, I don't necessarily care who is in a given room, because we all know if you just elevate, a person who looks like you or a person from our communities into these rooms without actually changing the distribution of power, like, well, all we have are just skin folk aren't kinfolk, and great, it's black faces in high places or trans faces in high places, right? It doesn't help, right? So it's not enough to just say, well, change who's in the room and everything's great. No, like, the people in the room are almost interchangeable. It's the power in the room, the power afforded by the position of being an executive in these, major companies, that allows people to say, oh, you know what, I actually think we're beholden to no one right now, so we can do whatever we want. That's the thing that we need to shift. Now, I will say that that's not the case in every single organization. I have worked in some organizations where the people at the very top, they have the power, they have the potential to be beholden to no one, but they feel guilty about it. They've got that little shred of conscience that's just like, okay, if I wanted to, I could lay off 20% of my company right now and no one could stop me. And we could totally do that. And I'm sure our investors would give our stock price a bump. But I feel a little bad about that. So maybe I'm going to hold off and ask, like, what can I do that isn't that might continue to bring some profit, that might continue to bring some value for the company without necessarily declaring that people don't matter. And, I think building an entire business or industry to do people-focused work to appeal just to the guilty conscience of those executives is a bit of a fragile value proposition. And yet, I think that's kind of where we are, right? Because, the chips are on the table, and I think there's just so much power concentrated in these rooms that if there is any opportunity to kind of shift how decisions are being made or to appeal to the people who are making these kinds of decisions, I think that is our opportunity. So I actually do find myself talking to a lot of these, call them guilty executives, right? I talk to them all the time. And I think for them, it's interesting, like the way that a lot of these folks think about the world is in a very zero-sum way between people and profit. And so they think, look, I want to care about people, but I also want to make money. And I know that the only way to make money is to exploit people. And that's kind of like an internal absolute truth for them, right? Like it's look, I can talk nicely about people, and when the profits are really good, like I might even do something nice for people. But we all know that at the end of the day, like people are just tools, and you have to axe some of them to make some profit. And I'm like, holy crap, right? Like I guess, like maybe that's how you make it into these positions, right? Like you probably started off not thinking that, but here you are. So when I talk to these folks, and it's not that often, but like I do talk to these folks, I think a lot of it is really working on that assumption, saying like, is this truly the only way forward for your organization? And I help them understand that when you exploit people, that has real costs to your organization, right? Like we talk about this all the time in people-focused work. The cost of hiring a worker is 1.5 times their salary. And if you've created a revolving door of talent because you're just exploiting your workers, eventually your talent pool will dry up. Like that thing isn't infinite, right? And
1.5 is modest.
That's modest, yeah. Like this is on average, right? Like if you lay off one of your skilled senior employees that has all the institutional knowledge and memory, yeah, good luck replacing them, right? And we've seen so many of these fun stories of like, oh, company laid off their best employee because of, saying like, oh, we can replace them with AI. And then 3 months later, they're forced to hire them back because they're like, well, it turns out you were load bearing and the entire company is falling apart. Please, 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 would you come back? And I think what this tells me is that leaders are vastly underestimating the value of people in their organizations. And not just for things like pure profit, but also things like organizational health, right? The long-term survival of an organization, the reputation of an organization. Like these are all things that are harder to measure. They're intangibles. They're not just the bottom line revenue. And so by having these kinds of conversations and say, okay, look, right? You can make a decision to exploit and abuse a bunch of people, and I suppose I legally can't stop you. But here are the costs of doing that. Right? Are you ready to take on these costs? And usually they say, I wasn't aware that there were so many costs. And I'll tell them like, yeah, right? Like you're basically destroying your morale, you're destroying your culture, you're destroying your pipeline, you're destroying your retention. You immediately cause everyone who you didn't lay off to start looking for a job. That reputational damage ripples across the entire talent pipeline. Your existing executives get flighty. You make worse and worse decisions. Like there's actually really good research. I think Culture Amp, you know them, right? Put out some really interesting research that shows that culture never really recovers after a layoff. I think it takes like 2 to 3 years for scores after a layoff to return to the level where they're at before. Like it's just like you are just bombing your own company culture, and for what, right? Like a little bump in your stock price. It's just not a good decision at the end of the day. And yet leaders are making this because they feel pressured. They think my only choice, if I want to survive as a company, is to abuse my people. And I think it's really the job of anyone who, has influence in this space right now to like disabuse them of this completely bonkers idea, right? Like there has to be an alternative. You can run a healthy and profitable workplace without exploiting your people, right? Like that has to be possible. And if regulation isn't going to compel that, we need other means of influence, whether that's unionizing, whether that's social movements, whether that's appealing to the guilty conscience of leaders. I mean, we need to do something about this, right? Because I think the direction that so many workplaces are going is just bad for society, bad for people. And honestly, it's bad for the long-term survival of the organizations that are doing it, right? Even if they're seeing short-term gains.
Yeah, that's 100%. Like, I think, and it comes back to this, like how we kicked this whole thing off, right? But like, I think a core function of late stage of capitalism, period, to be clear, then also just late stage capitalism is emphasis on short return, right? And short term is relative. What's scary though is that short term now is like I say this story often on the pod, right? Like Lily, I remember when I graduated from the University of Houston in 2011, and my first job was with Target. Then I went on to a bunch of different places, but my first like 2-3 jobs, they came in and they gave you a career map. They would be like, hey, we think like if you stay here, you here in year 1, you keep on going by year 3, you get your right you get right X, Y, and Z, you're going to be able to path and do different things. But they're showing you a roadmap of how long we expect you to be here, or how, or they're letting you know that we are prepared and want you to be here for at least like 6 years. Like that was common in retail, that was common in energy. But then you fast forward, and then on top of that, when you talk to leaders and you're talking about their priorities, again, it was like in the mid 2000s, like in the 2010s, you talk about their priorities. They're talking to you in like, 24, 36 month, 48 month context. But today, so often, first of all, people are not brought in with this idea that we're going to train you up and mobilize you and have you on this rotational thing. Not to say it doesn't exist. It does. It does. And
people are disposable.
Or disposable. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're definitely disposable. And but they also you don't come in with a runway to learn. You come in with an expectation to execute against this moonshot that we have over the next maybe 2 quarters. And we're going to analyze. And if we're tracking well against that moonshot, or we meet that moonshot, well then great, you get to keep your job. If not, well then maybe we move you somewhere else, but very likely we're going to let you go. And so to your point, it's a body shop. We're just and it doesn't give space to development. It doesn't give space to what kind of employee experience is that, right? So it's interesting. You look at people's like anecdotally, right? But obviously the data also shows this out that like people are working shorter stints at more places now than they were obviously like 15, 20 years ago. Like the idea of like, I remember in 2010, 2011, and like before I graduated from college, people were like, hey, listen, you don't want to be jumping around every 18 to 24 months. You're going to look like a flight risk, blah, 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 blah. That's normal now. People
right. I was hearing that too when I was graduating, right? And companies, right, there were all these think pieces that are just like, oh, it's terrible that all the workers are doing this. And now it's all driven by these same companies, right? They're just like, oh, we've learned that we can basically treat all work, even knowledge work, right, as interchangeable, disposable, like pieces, right? Like it's basically the factorization of knowledge work across every industry. And that's horrifying. I mean, you could argue that it's just the chickens coming home to roost, right? You could just say, well, this has been the case in the manufacturing sector for decades, and now knowledge work isn't safe either, especially with AI. But I think, like you could zoom out and just say like, well, work itself is kind of falling apart, right? Work itself is crumbling because leaders, again, a very small number of leaders have been kind of either out of hubris or out of ignorance, right? Like tricked into this Faustian bargain, right? To say like, oh, if we just dispose of all of our people, then good things will come to us, right? And then everyone's doing it at scale across every industry. Even the good leaders are like, well, I guess I do have to dispose of my people to stay competitive. And we're just creating a growing and growing and growing underclass of people who are constantly at the margins, who are experiencing, incredible amounts of scarcity and stress and fear. And then, that just turns it into this pressure cooker of mental health crises and gun violence. And now you have America, right? I'm just describing America. So what do we do, right? Like that's kind of the big question, right? Like we can see all the moving parts and kind of how they trickle down into this massive harm. But, I think a question that I ask myself a lot is, what do we do? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it too, Zach, obviously.
No. Here's the thing is like, I super agree. And it's spooky. It's scary when, these organizations will announce, oh, we're cutting 20% of our workforce, and their stock price jumps. It jumps, and there's no one asking, like, it feels like there's no one thinking systemically of like, hey, we are human beings and you sell a service or a product that human beings have to buy. If people keep losing their jobs and have no means to buy said service or product,
who's going to buy it?
Who is going to buy your product or service, and how does your company stay solvent?
No, Zach, that's a problem for next quarter.
Right.
We're not there yet.
Right. That's that's how extreme these short terms, that's how extreme we've gotten in our short term thinking. It's like, I don't know. It's like if you're hungry and you cut your foot off to eat it, it's like, hey, like you need that. And so to your question of like what we do, I mean, there is something that we should do, but this is a podcast. I don't want to get disappeared. Mm-hmm. And I certainly don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, Zach, first of all, it's your podcast. And second of all, I think, if someone is a listener listening to this, we have been very doom and gloom for the last little bit. No. So I want to give them something.
No. I was going to say the thing to do is we need to go we need to go on a strike. We need to go on we need to go on an actual worker strike.
Yeah.
We need to go on a general strike. We also need to figure out like, what are the answer is a general strike, but what are other ways that we can disrupt capital and create clear point of pressure to the oligarchical corporate class? Like, that is what we need to do, right? And so like, you think about, that's what I say, there's something we can do. Like, I don't know, like when you think about like America versus like a China or a France even, like which are obviously wildly different cultures and place contexts. But we're just really conditioned. I think we're just overly conditioned to comfort. I don't know if we're willing to do those things, but I don't know what other option we have, right? Like in terms of if there's no regulation and there's heightened levels of surveillance, like surveillance that we have never, like in terms of it just being so naked. Obviously, there's been ridiculous amounts of surveillance that makes us uncomfortable for the past few decades. I mean, Edward Snowden called all that out, like whatever. But like our options are becoming increasingly limited, and sadly, like our options become more direct, right? Like I don't think doing like a Samba line in front of the police is going to be effective. I don't think writing like a really nicely worded letter or like a really nice opinion piece on Washington Post is going to be effective either.
So tell you what, Zach, I agree. I do think we need something like a general strike. I think it's not that Americans are too coddled or too accustomed to comfort. I think you might be able to make that argument of knowledge workers or tech workers, right?
Yeah, not everybody. Fair. Yes.
Right. Like you could say that knowledge workers were in this golden bubble, right, between 2000 and maybe 2015, where they were kind of running the whole game and saying like, oh, if you just learned how to code, you could, actually experience something like the American dream. And like, isn't that great? And now that's falling apart even for the coders. So I think it's less that. I think for me, it's that scarcity is so acute for people that they don't have the infrastructure or the safety net, not that we don't have the infrastructure or safety net to ourselves survive a general strike, right? I think when you look at the conditions for what makes a strike succeed, first of all, I think it's going to be very difficult to organize a nationwide strike. I think we actually will see more success looking at, for example, one workplace or one region or one locality saying, look, we're going to do a whole bunch of organizing to create a safety net for these workers so that they can survive the strike. And then let's create enough reason to strike in the first place. Why would they need to strike? To change working conditions, to change pay, to influence leadership decisions? Like, there needs to be a strong rationale, a strong story. Unfortunately, you can't just lead with like, the rich have too much and that's why you got to strike, right? Like people need something more than that, right? It's like, okay, the rich have too much and you're being abused every day as a worker, right? Like, we need to change those conditions. That's why you strike. And then we need to do a ton of work to create that safety net so that when they're not getting their paychecks, they don't immediately starve and die. And that, I think, is the problem that we struggle with as a country. Not that we have become, I guess, oblivious to wealth inequity, but that we can't really organize ourselves to create safety nets for people, right? Like we prefer the delusion that, well, that's just them over there and I will survive, right? Like, I'm going to be okay. As long as I fight for me, I don't need to fight for them.
That individualism is killing us.
I think that's part of the problem, right? Like that is a very uniquely American thing. This idea that, we are all castles by ourselves. And if we just fight for ourselves, right? It doesn't matter if everyone else goes through scarcity or starvation or hunger or being unhoused or mental health crises. I'm fine as long as I invest in me. And I think we need to do something about that, right? Like, we need to create community connections. We need to create relationships on a local level between people and those that they work with. We need to be investing in local communities, right? You brought up Mamdani, right? I think there's a lot of potential there for a grassroots populist movement that isn't built on anger or rage or xenophobia or transphobia, right? But is built on, collective shared action, right? Mutual aid. I think there's a huge hole right now in American society for that kind of community-driven mutual aid, and people are hungry for it, right? Like, we all want it.
Yes.
Like, that is, I think, the way forward. So
I love that.
Like, we build that infrastructure, and then on top of that infrastructure, we help people understand that thriving actually is possible, and that the barriers to thriving are not trans people. They're, in fact, your employer who's paying you sub-minimum wage, right? And then we say, okay, great. Then what do you want to do about it? Then we organize. Then we say whether that's a general strike, right? Or a work stoppage, like, what do we do? And that's, I think, how we build power from the bottom up. Now, that's easier said than done, right? But
no, it is. And I'll cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Like, that's basically what I was going to say, right? Like, that's what I think we have to do. I don't know if you brought me on this podcast to give political commentary, but
I did.
Here we are. Now I'm giving political commentary.
No, I did. I wanted whatever Lily Zheng commentary I was going to get, which I got. So this is excellent. I mean, it's the thing about it is, to your point about it, calling it political commentary, right? Is my hope is that people are seeing that in this moment, there is no more. There's not a delineation between your politics and your real life, right? Like, you need to be into politics because politics is going to be into you. Like,
sure,
right? Like, I mean, everything that we're seeing right now is some type of quote unquote political decision or action, and it's our life. And I'm also confident that this is a moment in time. I mean, look, you got ICE like storming people's apartments and pulling people, disappearing folks, locking up citizens for months at a time, locking up all sorts of people, be they undocumented or not, all sorts of time, for all sorts of reasons, violating their rights as just people on this land, irrespective of their citizenship or not. So that's a political thing. It's also a human rights thing, but also, if we want to be if we have to connect the dots for those who need the help, maybe I can hold your hand and say it, is some of these people oftentimes have jobs. So their experience at work is also relevant here as well. Like, you're a leader, and if you're a leader and you have a population of Black and brown people, then there might be a chance, especially if you live in one of these cities, where these where this Gestapo is running around and like locking up people, haranguing people, that your employees might be impacted, even if they're not the ones. Like maybe it's a friend or a relative. So like it's all, yeah, it's political, I guess, but it's like it's also just like real life. I mean, and like the thing I like to end, because I told you I'd get you out of here on time. I want to end where we started, which is something which you brought up, which is solidarity. And I believe the way that you beat back the cure for capitalism is community, and you can't have community if you don't have solidarity. This idea, you're absolutely right. Like I do think about the American psyche, the American mentality is a bunch of castles, like a bunch of little castles, like right next to each other with their own little moats and guns and whatever else, trying to figure out how they can continue to get their castle taller and taller and taller while helping nobody else, right? Like, and like we're incentivized for that. Like we've been propagandized. To your point about delusion, I mean, like so much so that it's easier even now. It's like individualism is almost becoming its own form of escapism in the face of authoritarianism and oppression and like blatant oppression, right?
Right. Which I get, because I think there's so much surrounding us that we can't control. So people retreat to the safety of like, well, I can control this little bubble, so I'm just going to stay here, right?
And then eventually your bubble gets so small you suffocate, right?
Or and something from the outside pops it, and then you realize the entire time that you should have been asking for help, right?
Yes. Lily, look, we could talk for hours. It's funny, I'm looking up like, dang, this time went by, could easily add an hour to this pod. I won't, in the spirit of respecting your time.
You can always bring me back again.
You're always welcome. Like to be like you're always welcome. I know, because I think I said, yo, like come back, and you were like, is this an invitation? Okay, yeah, just send me the link. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
I was like, all right. So, but I think let's end with this, right? Because you're right, it's been doom and gloom. I don't think it's been doom and gloom. I think we've been honest.
I think it's been real. It's been real. But I think, I wouldn't fault someone listening to be like, oh my gosh, this is heavy.
Right. No,
like,
it's heavy.
What do I do to lighten some of this? How do I not bring this cloud of late stage capitalism into whatever I'm about to do next after I'm listening to this podcast?
No, more than fair. So more than fair. So let's do this then. Let me ask you this. 3 points of advice you would give to C-suite leaders right now. Let's do that first.
C-suite leaders. Okay. So, well, first of all, how many C-suite leaders do you have tuning into this podcast, man? But it's okay. It's okay. Sorry to roast you. Three bits of advice for C-suite leaders. I would say one, really get clear about the costs of inaction and the costs of exploitation. You might not even think about exploitation as exploitation. You might just say, look, it's a very expensive quarter. People are expensive. We have to cut costs. I'm sorry. Right. And I think when you only see people as the cost of their salary, it's actually even a somewhat rational decision, right? But you're just completely misunderstanding the equation. You're not understanding the costs of retraining. You're not understanding the cost of morale, the cost of turnover. And so talk to anyone, talk to someone around you to get a sanity check, right? Be like, I think this is a relatively cut and dry decision. Am I losing it? And anyone you talk to, if they're out of your immediate cohort, will say, yeah, you're completely losing it. This is a terrible decision, right? Which leads me to my second bit of advice. Get out of your executive bubble. Right. I talk to so many of these executives. They only talk to other executives. And so you see this mass delusion. We also saw this with return to office mandates, right? Where one person is just like, you know what, we should have a return to office mandate. And because all they do is talk to each other, they convince themselves that return to office mandates are super popular and everyone loves them. Then they do them and then destroy their workforce culture, and they're all surprised by it. They're like, wait, everyone I talked to said it was a great idea. Yeah, because you're only talking to people like yourself. Talk to anyone else, right? Talk to someone in your sports club. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your barista you get coffee to. I don't care. Talk to someone and be like, hey, what is a reasonable person going to do in this situation? And they will probably say the opposite of whatever it is you just told me you were going to do. Like, don't do that, right? And the third piece of advice, this is really hard because you get a lot of reward for not doing this, but like think in terms of 10-year cycles or 5-year cycles, right? Not 2-quarter cycles or 1-quarter cycles. Like ask, because I think every executive I've talked to is obsessed with this thing called legacy. You want to leave a legacy, right? Guess what? Legacies aren't made in 1 quarter. Legacies are made in 10 years. So what do you want to be remembered for in 10 years? How you exploited your workers every quarter until you had nothing left to exploit and ended up a nobody? I don't think that's a great legacy, buddy, right? Like, I think you want to build something that lasts. And if you want to build something that lasts, you need to take the hard choice of actually building a functional organization instead of the easy choice of just pressing the layoff button once every 6 months, right? And like, it's on you to be a good leader and to create that legacy, which I know you want if you're a C-suite leader. So there you go. 3 bits of advice.
Lily, thank you so much. And I don't know. You think it's surprising that C-suite people listen to the podcast? Was that the joke?
I don't know how many listen to your podcast. I feel like, here, you tell me how many C-suite leaders listen to your podcast.
You tell me. We can play. Like, you tell me how many people you think nobody listens to this podcast. That's what you're saying? Is that the joke?
I think lots of people listen to this podcast, Zach. Are you kidding me? I just don't know how many C-suite folks, because C-suite folks don't listen to podcasts, in my opinion.
That's
they're
fair.
Super, like...
No, that's fair. That's fair.
They're nowhere to be found,
Here's what I would say, is that the C-suite people...
Sorry, no shade on you.
No. I received the shade. It's hot. It's hot in Houston. I need it. All right? So here's what I would say is... For context, for those who need to know, is we have a C-suite audience. However, what happens oftentimes is it's the directors and VPs who listen to this podcast who then will share it to their leadership.
Those are the folks that listen, right? And the challenge is that they don't have the power themselves, and so they just have to do all this upwards advocacy every single day. Like that I expect, right? Like the director level folks, they're just listening to podcasts all day because they're trying to manage up because their C-suite leader doesn't listen to a single podcast and gets all these wild ideas. Right, like that's the case for every C-suite leader I've talked to.
You're absolutely listen. The C-suite leaders are not listening to podcasts. They're busy trying to figure out how to, buy this next yacht.
Lay off more people.
Lay off more people. They're trying to figure out what kind of, they're trying to figure out what kind of wine to match with a whale stew. What this is like this is so a few people. Yes, a few CLOs and CHROs and CEOs listen to this podcast. But more so, it's the senior directors, the VPs, the executives, but not the So no, but no, I don't know. I appreciate the jokes. I like to make sure I understand the jokes so we can play back and forth. But listen, Lily, I appreciate you. I appreciate you again, really. Before we let you go for real, what and where can we find you? Where can we engage? How can we support you?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I have a new book that's coming out in January, Fixing Fairness, 4 Tenets to Transform Diversity Backlash into Progress for All. It's basically a weirdly optimistic take on the future of people-related work. I promise you, I'm actually kind of an optimist. And that comes out January 13th, so... the best way to support me in my work is to look up that book to see if it speaks to you. You can read about it in the Harvard Business Review. Zach, I can actually send you a gift link so you can send it out to viewers for free if you'd like.
Yes.
Yeah. I get 5 of those a month. I might as well use them. So you can find me there. I still post once in a while on LinkedIn, fighting against the algorithmic hellscape. And you can also find me on my website at lilyzheng.co, where I post all my updates that happen everywhere. So, yeah, let's see. Oh, I also have a Substack. I've been working on that. It's really hard to write long form pieces right now.
It's not easy.
Just fighting against the malaise and the ennui and the world is falling, but I really do my best to write. I think writing is healing for me. So you can find me on Substack too. But yeah, support me, support the book, support Zach. I think there's there is opportunity, right? Like, I really do want to make that clear. Like, we do have opportunity. We can build. We do have power. We do have influence. It feels uphill right now, but I think if we use it well and if we use it smartly, like, we can make a difference. And I choose to believe that, right? So I hope you do too. And you take what you can from this conversation to keep making a difference.
I love the framing, and I love your positivity. I love the hope that you carry and that you have. Not even for like some idea, but for people. And make sure y'all click the links in the show notes and learn engage. If you don't know who Lily Zheng is, you missing out. Make sure you get familiar. Yes, send me that link. Make sure I will put it in our Patreon actually. Make sure y'all there you go. And then till next time, y'all, this has been Zach. You listen to Lily Zheng, speaker, author, coach, who coaches executives, by the way. Executive coach, all right? Workshop facilitator.
I try when they listen.
And so many more things. Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.